in the Netherlands, we have around 700,000 loaves of bread, which are baked every day but not eaten. So that's a huge amount for such a small little country. About half of bread waste in the Netherlands happens at home. I always have people then telling me how they never waste anything, which from my work now, I know that statistically that's probably not true. Bread is the most wasted product, not just in households, but also across the supply chain. So in retail and bakeries, where it often ends up as animal feed, or at home where people throw away their crusts and ends. So we really take the value for bread and all the ingredients, efforts, and passion that goes into it for granted. And we also forget that we pay for all this waste as well.
Welcome to Don't Waste This, a podcast by WRAP, the Global Environmental Action NGO. This is a series about what we stand to lose if we don't fix the broken systems that we all rely on for our food, products, and everyday essentials, systems that still follow a wasteful take, make, dispose model. This season, we're focusing on food and the issue of waste. Around the world, families and friends sit down to enjoy meals together, ingredients and dishes that carry meaning, memory, and identity. But every year, around 1.3 billion tons of food never gets eaten. That's nearly a third of all food produced globally. And when food is wasted, it's not just nutrition we lose, but also the water, energy, land, and human effort that went into growing and producing it. The consequences are huge. Currently, if food waste were a country, it would be the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Food is wasted at every link in the chain, from growers and retailers to our own homes. In this season, you'll hear from people on the front lines of change in the global Food Pact Network. Together, we'll explore how food shapes culture and identity, the challenges of food waste around the world, and how local action is building a global movement. We'll spotlight the solutions already underway and ask one urgent question: why must we transform our food system? Welcome back to Don't Waste This. I'm Talia Shalev, International Partnerships Manager here at WRAP, and I'm here today to chat with Jip Jordan from Samen tegen Voedselverspilling, also known as the Food Waste Free United in the Netherlands, about the food system crisis and what's at stake if we don't fix it. Jip, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to start just by getting to know you a little bit better. So could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so my name is Jip Jordan, and I'm a project manager at Samen tegen Voedselverspilling, or Food Waste Free United. At Food Waste Free United, we work on a range of different topics relating to food waste. So the first is monitoring. So we do that together with the University of Wageningen. So I work on this for several sectors, and we have the second part is that we work and kind of focus a bit more in depth on certain topics. Bread is a good example of this. I do quite a lot on bread waste, as it's one of our strategic kind of focus points, and also a project on circular animal proteins. And lastly, also take part in the WRAP network, but we've also set up a European network where we come together with practitioners from a couple of different European countries to learn from each other and try and help each other accelerate on food waste reduction.
And how long have you worked in the food waste reduction space, Jip?
Since April of last year.
How are you finding it so far?
I really like it. So I worked in the food industry before. I have a food technology background. So I really like, still working in the food space, but then also really linking it to sustainability. And the fact that I think food waste reduction, it's such a no-brainer in my opinion. It's a very easy topic in the sense that I've yet to meet someone who's really against reducing food waste. But that's what I really find it interesting, learning so much about the industry. And the simpler something seems, the complexer it actually is something I found out. But I quite like that challenge as well.
Good. Well, it sounds like you're in the right space then.
Yeah.
Food, as we all know, can be incredibly emotional for all of us. It's at the heart of our cultures, our countries, the way that we come together socially. If there's one ingredient or dish that you could choose that would represent you as a Dutch person or the Netherlands, something that's really special to you, your family, but is also maybe slightly at risk of climate change and the impacts of the food systems crisis that we're facing at the moment, what would that particular ingredient or dish be?
The thing that came to mind was really the sandwiches in the lunchbox, or specifically the cheese sandwich in the lunchbox, which we think is really a perfect example of Dutch culture and something that we really eat every day, usually both breakfast and lunch. So we thought that has to be a important dish for us. So.
And in terms of its impact in the food system within the Netherlands, can you speak to any of the impacts that you're seeing across the supply chain, any specific crises that you're seeing in relation to the ingredients in the sandwich in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so even though we love our bread, we've forgotten its value. So in the Netherlands, around 700,000 loaves of bread are wasted every day. So bread is the most wasted product, not just in households, but also across the supply chain. So in retail and bakeries, where it often ends up as animal feed, or at home where people throw away their crusts and ends. So we really take the value for bread and all the ingredients, efforts, and passion that goes into it for granted. And we also forget that we pay for all this waste as well. And the sandwich, I think, represents our unconscious habits around food. So we throw away food without thinking about it and realizing what it took to get that food on our plates. And to fix this, we really need to restore the value of food and change our behavior. So bread is such a central part of Dutch culture, but its waste has been normalized so much. I think the daily sandwich really shows how much we take our food for granted. I think bread has really been impacted by geopolitical crises in the past couple of years. So when the war started in Ukraine, the grain price really went up a lot, or the wheat price went up, which really increased the price of bread significantly for a while. It's really kind of, I think, what would the good way of describing it be? Because it's such the fundamental part of our diet, I think it becomes very noticeable when the prices of bread increase. That obviously makes it very visible and more difficult for people to then buy those products.
No, I definitely would agree. We definitely saw something similar in the UK. Similarly to the Netherlands, we are very dependent on our sandwich. We love a good meal deal in the UK, and those are often based around the sandwich or the salad, depending on the kind of person you are. Me, I could eat sandwiches all day, every day for 3 meals and a snack, but I would just need to make sure the filling is varied throughout the day to keep things interesting. But there is something very comforting about being able to fill 2 slices of bread. But anyway, food is incredibly special to everyone, and sounds like it's something that you also can connect with. And you talked a little bit about that food insecurity piece. And then what's been happening in terms of local, I guess, to the Netherlands, local geopolitical issues that we've been facing, unfortunately, but that might be being felt more globally too. Can you tell us a little bit about what Samen tegen Voedselverspilling is doing to tackle some of these challenges on a day-to-day or an annual basis at the moment?
Well, specifically for bread, more generally and then specifically to bread, as we started monitoring first with retailers, so the big supermarket chains in the Netherlands, where bread was the most wasted product. And we've also had consumer household food waste studies done over the past couple of years, and their bread is also consistently the #1 wasted product. Then a couple of years later, we also started monitoring with the industrial bakeries. So these are the bakeries that supply bread to the supermarkets. First of all, we follow the Target Measure Act principle. So really seeing how much bread waste is there, and then kind of targeting that. So specifically for bread, we set up a bread cluster, as we call it, so the waste-free bread and pastry chain, where we really got some bakeries together, but also kind of the companies around that. So for example, a machine company, an automation and AI company, but also upcycle initiatives for bread to really see how we can tackle this bread waste, and see, what the next steps are, what the innovations are that can be possible. And then also, I think just for retailers, kind of seeing the volumes of that bread waste has also really been a great incentive for them to also look at this, significant waste, and they've started reducing that as well.
In terms of the businesses that you've engaged with, do you feel like you have been able to engage with a large majority of that part of the supply chain in the Netherlands? And are those learnings in those statistics that you started to gather, are they more widely available than outside of the Netherlands to inspire other countries to do the same?
Yeah, so we've definitely been able to reach a large proportion of the market. So for the retailers, I think we're at over 90% of the retailers supply their data, and we're over 70% of the industrial bakeries which supply their data to the monitors. Specifically for the cluster, that group is a bit smaller. The bakery sector is quite a conservative one. It's one where there's low margins, and it's a really competitive industry. So that kind of makes having companies really share openly about what's working for them and what they're kind of struggling with quite difficult. So we've really had to have a lot of one-on-one conversations and with all these different companies. And what's really helped is that so in the Netherlands, we have quite a lot of sector organizations. So for example, there's a sector organization for industrial bakeries, and their director has been really helpful and really instrumental in kind of getting all of this going, to have all this contact with the bakeries. And this monitor is one of the most successful ones when we're just gearing up to share the results for the 5th year in a row, which is really special. One of the first industries that's been doing that in the Netherlands. And these results will also become publicly available somewhere in November. So the University of Wageningen will also be making a bit more of a detailed report on that waste and what it looked like over the years. And the different streams and stuff there are. So that's definitely something other countries can also look at. And also the template that we use is publicly available. So that's also a good starting point for any other country that wants to start looking at their bread waste.
That's brilliant, and thank you for making some of those tools freely available. We see that especially other initiatives or other packs around the world that are wanting to engage with specific sectors really appreciate having those resources available for them to not have to start from scratch. And we see that sharing of resources and tools across the Food Pact Network has been really helpful over the last few months since we started. So I can only say thank you for continuing to support those activities as one of those packs that are part of the network. Do you have a specific success story in relation to some of the businesses that you've been working with and looking at bread waste reduction specifically that you wanted to share today, someone that you wanted to celebrate or highlight that's been doing a lot of work in this space?
So we've been collecting food waste data from retailers and industrial bakeries, and a sector benchmark was created for both, which gives insights for next steps. So with updated formulations, certain bread products can now stay fresh for 2 to 3 days instead of 1. So in the Netherlands, the bakeries supply the bread to the supermarkets, and then if they're not sold at the end of the day, it goes back to the bakeries, and then it often or usually becomes animal feed. And this has been kind of a focus point from both the retailers and also the industrial bakery sector. And we've seen that decrease around 40% over the past 4 years. Or unsold loaves are now also being sold the next morning at a discounted price, which is also very helpful for kind of the more equality subject we've been speaking on. And retailers and bakers have also been working together to improve forecasting to really make sure that their production closely matches the demand. And to accelerate progress, we've established a waste-free bread and pastry chain cluster, as we call it, where we bring together bakeries, machinery and automation companies, ingredient suppliers, but also upcycling initiatives. And this collaborative network exchanges best practices, innovations, and knowledge to identify kind of the next steps to reduce bread waste, but also dough waste in the bakeries. And with this cluster, we also had a voucher scheme. So, for example, with that, we were able to financially support a project which a cracker company did with an AI-driven automation company, which helped them to optimize their production lines and also to have them to have less waste, but also reduce their reliance on manual labor, which there's quite a lot of shortage on in the Netherlands at the moment. We've been working together with the bakeries and also the retailers to really also highlight bread waste towards consumers. So about half of bread waste in the Netherlands happens at home. So, for example, during our annual consumer-facing campaign called the Food Waste Free Week in September, we always put a special emphasis on bread as well. So we had stickers which were put on all the breads sold in supermarkets. So we had around 8 million stickers by the different bakeries and supermarkets, which for a population of 18 million is a significant amount of stickers. So I think it's really just, we really try to work across the supply chain. And I think just having all those actors participating in these kind of actions has been, I think, really the key success to what we're doing.
Amazing. And we saw some of the images from your campaign this year, and it looked like a brilliant campaign, one that was very well attended even by royalty in the Netherlands, which is very impressive. I think the rest of the Pact Network are looking to see how they might be able to engage with their royal families for their next citizen engagement campaigns, because that's very impressive. In terms of, you mentioned, that you've got some plans coming up in terms of publishing some of the data from some of this work that you've been doing over the last few years, sharing some of those resources and tools in terms of how to other businesses can start measuring and reporting their bread waste specifically. Do you have any other upcoming activities over the next year, specifically in relation to tackling bread waste, both in the supply chain and in the home, that you're excited about, or that you're maybe even looking for further engagement and support on, that you might want to talk about on this podcast?
Easter is always a moment when we also highlight bread waste, because in the Netherlands, that's also a very specific moment. We eat a lot of bread, so that's also kind of a targeted moment that we focus on that.
I was going to say, tell me more about Easter. I've never known that bread was associated to Easter, especially not in the UK. So how is it that you consume more bread at Easter time?
I think it's more in general, people just eat a lot.
Okay.
So there's just a lot of bread, and I don't know. So there's also always very specific kind of like buns and pastries and things around Easter. So often we see that when there's kind of a different assortment for a holiday, that there'll be more waste. So that's also why we try and focus on that as well. And I think, well, at least in my family, everyone's always worried about having too little at holidays. So we'll have, 4 buns per person, when most people will have 2, maybe 3 if they're really, going crazy. So I think that's also a big part of it, that it's kind of making sure you're getting the right inventory, getting the right groceries. And then when it's left over, in my family, we really have the big division of who gets the breads and the sprinkles, of course, the leftover eggs. We have tons of those always as well, at least in my family. But as the statistics show, I'm not the only one who has a family gathering and then has a lot of food left over. There's still always that fear that you might run out. So.
Yeah, especially around a holiday or a festive period. The worst thing that could happen is that we don't have enough, and that all that people remember is that there wasn't enough for everybody that attended, which is a ridiculous concept. But even working in this industry and working in food waste reduction, we still are at the mercy of those societal pressures around having plenty to share around with our families and friends. You mentioned a little bit about your engagement in the Food Pact Network, and how you've been sharing some of your learnings or insights from what you've been doing in the Netherlands with the rest of the network. And the problems that you described are not limited to what's happening in the Netherlands, which is what we're seeing when we're having our discussions in our community calls. Are you able to share any specific examples of what being part of the network has helped you to do in terms of progress or insights over the last year?
So I think what's really nice is connecting with other Pact members on specific topics. So we'll be having a call on bread and on bread waste soon with some of the Pact Network members from the US and Mexico. And I think the other way around, it's also been interesting to hear what's happening in different countries on different topics. We have our online meetings. So kind of hearing what's happening on that. On, for example, we had dairy and meat waste recently, which was interesting. And I think also one of the, just also realizing what's out there already. There's, for example, in the US, a lot of work done on employee engagement, which is something that we are also kind of hearing around us and seeing that that's really kind of a interesting step that we can work on more as well to help the businesses in our country also, engage their employees more to get them on board with decreasing waste. So I think that's really nice. Also, then knowing who's behind that information and being able to connect with them in an easier way to kind of really figure out what worked for them, what didn't. Because usually you see kind of the successes, but you don't really know what's behind and all the things they trialed which didn't work. So I think that's really the key thing that helps when you have a network like this, is that you can come in contact with colleagues, so to say, and really learn about the kind of trial and error that they had before they were able to set up a website with all the beautiful resources and everything, because I think if anything, we can learn almost even more from that than from just the successes.
Yeah, agreed. And you've also demonstrated that there is value in that that pre-competitive sharing, even through your EU member network that you've set up as well, which I know we're trying to see if we can connect the dots and bring everybody together if it's possible or relevant, depending on the topics that we're exploring, which is great. Great that those exist and that we want to continue growing our network, so that I think, as you said, like the goal is to make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts, especially if there are learnings to be had where we don't want to make the same mistakes over and over again. So again, gratitude for those networks and the championing of them that exists, both in the EU and globally too. We've talked a lot about the highlights and the successes of the work that you've been doing, specifically around bread waste. Are there other topics that you're particularly interested in or excited about at the moment in the Netherlands that you're focusing on?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I think one of the topics that I'm also working on is food to food, as we call it. So seeing how side streams or surplus food can be made into products so that it can still be consumed by people. And I think that's also just a really interesting topic as well. It's quite a difficult one, and from the outside it might seem quite simple, but it's quite the input is very diverse, and then it's also quite a difficult topic in terms of communication. So I'm really curious to see, we are seeing quite some initiatives which are now hitting supermarket shelves, which are quite successful, but to really kind of see that grow into kind of more standard products is something I'm also quite interested in, and hope that will kick off a bit more in the future.
So today we've talked a lot about progress and opportunities that are arising in the Netherlands. I'm curious to know from your perspective, especially when we talked a lot about bread and sandwiches, what do you foresee the real issue being if we don't take this action, if we don't encourage others to engage with us on food waste reduction activities?
Bread and all food carries an environmental footprint, and wasting it means wasting land, water, energy. And if nothing changes, we also risk losing the affordability and the accessibility of the daily bread-based lunch culture that we have and everyone relies on here. And waste runs throughout the entire chain, but the costs are currently just absorbed into the price, which makes it a silent burden that we all pay, but that disproportionately affects those with a smaller budget. Our sandwich culture is also, I think, a good example of what we're like as a culture. It's very non-hierarchical. So if you're at a company, I used to work at a big dairy company before, and you'll really see the CEO to the young employees to everyone in between, all eating their sandwich with peanut butter and cheese and sprinkles with hagelslag or whatever.
Peanut butter and cheese.
Not together.
Okay.
No.
Good. Glad to clarify that.
No. Different sandwiches. But I think if we don't start tackling these issues better, we'll also see that we'll lose kind of that kind of equal lunch culture that we have in the Netherlands, where you'll kind of start to see that division more and more in the workplace, but also at school, where, yeah, I think that's quite a unique thing about the Netherlands, is that one, we have a cold lunch, and two, we usually bring it from home. But everyone kind of almost always brings pretty much the same lunch. So I think that's quite a special thing to have. And I think that's something that we would lose if we don't figure out how to deal with this food waste crisis. Because in the end, we're paying for this waste in our supply chain. We've kind of accepted it without realizing it. But of course, if we decrease this waste, we can also decrease the cost price, and hopefully kind of buffer out all the crises that we're seeing across the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And maintaining that equity in our food consumption in a culture like that in the Netherlands can really be felt if it doesn't continue. I would really be interested to hear a bit more about you and what motivates you to do this work every day, because behind all of this there is a lot of challenges, and whilst it sounds like you have a lot of support and you're engaging with some very positive and driven people across the industry in the Netherlands, it can also be on some days difficult to get that engagement and that drive from all the stakeholders that we feel that we need to be engaging with. So are you able to share with us what it is that motivates you to keep going and to keep working in this space?
Yeah, so for me, I think I really want to do something in my work where I feel that I'm contributing to something positive, particularly on the sustainability front. And I think, like I said before, food waste, to me, it's a very common sense topic to be working on. What I also really like about it is how tangible it is. So if I'm speaking with friends or family, they really understand what food waste is, why it's, well, they don't always understand why it's important, but I think also from a Dutch perspective, we tend to be quite frugal. We want to kind of, we're not, in general or historically, we're not a very wasteful bunch. So I always have people then telling me how they never waste anything, which from my work now, I know that statistically that's probably not true. But then also they kind of will sometimes look at things from a different perspective. And I think that connection is something that I really like. That, I think food is such a interesting topic. It's so, it's really a daily moment that you can get to make choices to, make sustainable choices. And I think that's what I really like about it.
And long may it continue. I hope that, obviously, we all hope that we'll solve these issues in the next few years. But I hope that you always feel that passion and that excitement to connect with other people on this, and that there'll be opportunities for you to continue supporting the industry to do better, whether it's reducing food waste or something else that needs fixing, because there will always be something, I'm sure, that will need fixing.
Yeah.
Let's imagine in an ideal world that we do fix the food system, whatever that looks like, whatever fixing means to you. What do you think that would do for you, for your environment, for the people around you, and the future of bread and sandwiches in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so I think if we look at that, for me, it would be really people start valuing their food more. So I think then also less bread would be wasted. The money also would circulate fairly through the chain instead of going into the bin. We would pay a more honest price for what we eat. And then I think also consequently the planet wouldn't carry the cost of our waste anymore. I think it makes for a more stable and resilient food system as well if we don't have all this waste.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of that our planet is really bearing the cost of our decisions that we're making, and that there are people within that system as well that are being deeply impacted, both in our own countries, in the Netherlands and in the UK, but also more globally across the network that we're engaging with, which we have discussed with some of our other packs as well. So I really appreciate that message. So we talked about culture, we talked about your community, and the environmental impact of food waste and why we're working in this space. And also thank you for sharing what's personally motivating you to do the work that you're doing in the Netherlands, and also the benefits of being part of an initiative like yours and also being part of the Food Pact Network. So before we wrap up in 10 seconds or less, if you're able to, what is the most urgent message that you would like to make sure that people understand when it comes to why we need to fix our food system?
Yes, I really think it's a great opportunity. So I think the threat is very clear. We're overburdening our planet, but food is really the most tangible and daily way you can make that change. So I think a food waste-free world is possible, and anyone and everyone can be a part of it.
I like that very much. So we started talking about the lunchbox sandwich, which is a daily staple for you and also for me personally. And hearing your story and how you take action and the work that you're doing to really specifically target the waste that's arising from that dish, and everything it represents for you as an individual, but also in your community, and how we can protect that hopefully and make sure that we don't continue to perpetuate the issues that we're seeing arising in our communities. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that. It's been incredibly insightful. I've learned a lot about bread consumption, but also unfortunately how much bread is being wasted, or bread and pastries and other bakery products. I'm feeling motivated and inspired by the amount of engagement that you are seeing through your initiative, and the stakeholders that are engaged already. So thank you for sharing that today. And again, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You've been listening to Don't Waste This, a podcast by WRAP, the global environmental action NGO transforming our broken product and food systems to create circular living. In this series, we've explored the actions already underway to transform our food system and stop something that's so precious from being wasted. But with a challenge so urgent, more action needs to happen. The Food Pact Network, convened by WRAP, is connecting the countries featured in this series to scale climate-smart solutions and drive the systemic change needed to produce, share, and consume food without waste. We need businesses, philanthropists, non-profits, and governments to join us and scale action faster. Discover the impact we're already having and find out how you can take action to transform our food system by visiting WRAP's website.